motherhood interview. I am beyond excited to bring you today's guest, Hehe from Tranquility by Hehe. I know you are just going to love her. If you've ever thought about birth, which if you're a woman and you've wanted children, my guess is you've thought about birth. So if you've been nervous about it, if you just want to know your options, if you've never heard the word doula before, maybe you just don't know that much about doulas, you're really going to love today's interview. I want to give you a formal bio on Hehe. So Hehe is the founder of Tranquility by Hehe and the creator of the Birth Lounge online community for new and expecting moms. She is dedicated to helping women take control of their birth and avoid birth drama. As a maternity concierge service, she helps women navigate prenatal education, labor support, and preparing for postpartum to help their families balance all the puzzle pieces of having a baby. She's a family life educator as well, and transitioning to becoming a larger family and navigating parenthood is her jam. Her services extend through potty training. Oh my God, that's amazing. She knows that the information a woman has, the more ideal her birth experience is, and it's Hehe's goal for every expecting mom to have their dream delivery. With a master's in human development and family studies, Hehe empowers her clients to set boundaries with your healthcare provider and family circles surrounding the birth and postpartum parenting choices. She's also the host of the Tranquility Tribe podcast, which has 14,000 plus listeners in over 26 countries. The show often features leading experts in the pregnancy, women's health, and child arena so you can stay up to date on what's happening in the world that you're living in right now. I mean, aren't you excited? So let me give you a little bit more of the informal way that I met Hehe. When I was writing the Postpartum Grace Guide, I started to look for resources. I was like, maybe things like this already exist. And I came across Hehe and I absolutely fell in love with everything that she was offering. Her Instagram, she is just magnetic, and I was super thrilled to be able to connect with her on that platform. And so I reached out to her to see if she wanted to support the motherhood grace journey that I am on, and if there were any ways that I could support her and her community. And she jumped right in. So I know that you are not only going to love the interview that we did today. It's about 45 minutes. You're going to find cliff notes below and tons of information, but you're also going to love connecting with her on Instagram. So check her out. She's at Tranquility by Hehe. And also, I have a special code for you if you want to get into her birth lounge. Just go to thebirthlounge.com and use all capitals Grace Lounge, and you'll get $5 off each month. So amazing. Enjoy the interview. Okay, we're here with another episode of these motherhood interviews. I'm super excited to introduce all of you to Hehe of Tranquility by Hehe and the Birth Lounge. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you guys.
Yeah, so I know I already gave the introduction and how we got connected, which was Instagram, which is why I love social media. But I just want to hear in your own words a little more about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so this is kind of a long story, so I'll give you a synopsis.
It's always hard to make it short, isn't it?
So hard, especially when your story has what I consider like so many really like hard closed doors. So all throughout my story, I felt like there were places that I was just so confused as to why I couldn't make leeway in this particular area. And it's all because I needed to go into the birth world. Like the universe is guiding me. But to back things up, I have a master's in human development and family studies. And so I have done things like, oh my goodness, family coaching and private in-home work with children on the autism spectrum, helping parents navigate the school systems. I have been in the infant classroom for many years. I have done the toddler classroom for many years. I was in early intervention as a developmental specialist. And through all of this, I got the best experience working with families in so many different regions. The best thing that came from that, though, is that I got to deliver sensitive information and learn how to really help parents navigate sensitive situations, right? Okay, so I got my master's, I worked in all of these jobs, and I finally found myself in the classroom, and I was kind of stuck there. I had been there for 5 or 6 years consecutively, and Yeah, I just wasn't happy. It wasn't fulfilling me. And so I started to look into different directions. And someone I worked with said, you should be a doula. And I was like, oh, what is that?
I know that word always, like, when I heard the word, I was like, are they speaking a different language? Like, what
Yeah,
is that?
everyone always asks me if it's Greek, which is so funny. But yeah, so I was like, what in the world is a doula? And turns out you can be a doula after just a weekend course. And for me, I sat in the class and thought it was really wonderful that we were serving women in that way. But I was really, to be completely like honest, I was disturbed that it was such a short training and that it only, it really just skimmed the surface. And so I left that training and I saw the biggest deficits, like huge glaring gaps in maternity care, and I knew I had the answer to that. And so I think that's why I had all of those doors, really kind of closed. And it was things like, I actually thought I would move to Boston and open up a school for children on the autism spectrum. And I moved to
Mm,
Boston and spent 18 months trying to get my foot in the door in the autism community and couldn't make any leeway. And I was so confused.
wow, that's
Right.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I worked jobs that on paper and in the interview they seemed amazing. I went into all of them being like, okay, this is it. This is my dream job. And I would get in there and they were horrible, terrible jobs. Either I saw really terrible things or the admin was just really just not supportive, or it was just an environment I couldn't flourish in. And so it was like hard slam doors in my face. And I did it, they all were leading me to birth. So I saw these glaring holes and I built a website the first weekend of training, and now we are here 3 years later.
Okay, say, so hello. So this is blowing my mind because we, just so people who are listening to this know, we were talking beforehand and just saying like really how we just feel like we're like the same person in a couple of cities. But my background's very similar, and I taught high school math, and I thought that was my dream job. It was what I was going to do forever. And same thing, I was like 4 years in, very hard situations I had to live through, and I was just like, this isn't it. Like, this is not it. And it just, same thing, I kept like going down a different path. And I still feel like I'm trying to maybe find exactly where I fit in, but I love that like you're 3 years in, because you can feel your passion. You can feel like when I watch your Instagram or just read, I'm like, this girl knows her stuff. And it's just refreshing to have somebody who's sharing that information, because I mean, I guess at this point you must have just been starting really when I was getting pregnant. And it's like I was reading things and I knew in my heart it wasn't right. And I was like trying so hard to find like, this doesn't feel right to me. And I was like going through all these paths, and it's amazing now that like you have this resource out there. I would have like killed for that information, and when I was going through everything. So that's totally awesome. I'm so glad that you're doing that. So yeah, tell us a little bit more. You have your premier like maternity concierge, you call it. Tell us, well, maybe start with what is a doula, since like I said, a lot of people are like, wait a second, what?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for your sweet words. A doula. Okay, so a doula is a professional, actually, so let me explain the kind of two different types of doulas. There's not any main organization for doulas, unfortunately. And so you can wake up one day and just decide that you want to attend women's birth and you can be a doula. I do believe that some people are naturally really good at being a doula. For me, it is a very energetic thing. I kind of step into the birth room and things just kind of flow out of me. Sometimes I leave births and I'm like, where did I pull that from? Oh my goodness, thank goodness. Like, thank goodness I had access to like something bigger than me, because that was wild. I can't believe I thought about that. So I do think that people have that. I still do believe everybody needs training. You
Mhm.
can't support women in, these really pivotal places, transitional places in life without the training. So there are, a range of doulas, but a doula essentially is a person or a professional who is going to provide you with physical, emotional, and educational support during your labor process. Most doulas are going to include at least one prenatal visit. That's pretty typical to have like anywhere from 1 to 3 prenatal visits. And then some doulas provide postpartum care, which is care overnight care, daytime care. And then, yeah, We do it a little bit differently. So our maternity concierge is a little bit different approach, but that is going to be your typical doula.
Cool. So there's not, like you said, there's not really like a governing, you want to look for this certification type of thing. So because actually, when I was writing my book, I was like, I had a moment of panic of like, nobody's going to believe me. Like, who am I? And I looked into becoming a doula. And I was like, oh my gosh, same thing. I was like, it's a weekend training. Like, I could do this. And then I also paused because I was like, I had a doula at my birth. She was really wonderful. I still communicate with her today. She's really great. She's kind of a free spirit. She like lives all over the world. I never know where she's going to be. So she'll be like, hey, I'm like, all the way across the world. That's why I haven't gone back to you in a month. But yeah, I guess it's just, maybe it depends like where you live, if you know about them, or like, is there a good way to search for like a doula or something like that? I think you do virtual services too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to back up a little bit to the certification. Now, there
Mm-hmm.
are multiple certifying organizations, but
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
so you can be a certified doula. And what that means is that you have certified through this one organization that a group of people has made up. But these certifying organizations have no governing body. So like our government and our just like our healthcare system, our women's health, anything, human services department, like anything that you might think remotely would be involved is not involved at all. For me, that's a big pro, right? I think it's
Right.
like total freedom on the consumer. You get to find that perfect support, because if the government were to get involved, it would probably knock some people out. And or same thing as what we're seeing with our midwifery right now in America, is that they're making the standards so 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 narrow, not small. It's a lot of requirements, but it's very narrow. And if you don't fit exactly within those things, you can't be a midwife anymore. And so the midwives who've been practicing for like 45 years, delivered thousands of babies, are having trouble. So you would see the same thing with being a doula. But yes, you can be a certified doula. Again, all it really means is that the people who have made up that particular organization have said that you're good to have to like support people in births. For looking for a doula, my favorite, we only have one website that is actually, she filters the testimonies and you have to submit it through different emails, meaning like your clients actually have to be, it's not you submitting them. It's doulamatch.net. And then if you don't know doulas in your area, you can search by your zip code. If you do know doulas in your area, you can type in their name. And I want to venture to say that any doula that I would trust would be on doulamatch.net, but then I guess they're going to be your older doulas who have been doing it for a million years, and you definitely trust them with everything you've got, and they just don't want to be on the internet. So,
Right.
take that with a grain of salt. But for anyone younger, I think that doulamatch.net is kind of the place to be, because it's the only real site that you can get, not a Google result, not a paid ads result, not, every,
You don't know who's submitting. Yeah, cool.
Exactly. Or it's like based on SEO rather than like actual skill and stuff. You want to kind of look these things up. So your doula is not a medical person at all, right? We do zero medical things. But since we're in a medical environment, you want to do the same due diligence. You don't want every Tom, Dick, and Harry at your birth. You want to make sure that these doulas that are attending your birth are A, qualified, or B, educated probably more than just a weekend. Like, you just think if those things are important to you, and it may not be important to you at all. And that is amazing. I'm so glad that you have that. But for the people who are out there thinking, how am I supposed to trust these people? That's okay. It's okay to demand better. That. And you only get to do your birth one time. This is a one-time done deal thing. Like, demand better. You're worth it.
Oh my gosh, I have like goosebumps all over because it's so true. And I know when I was pregnant too, I was like terrified of birth. In fact, in high school, we had to write an essay thing, and it was like, what are you afraid of? And literally my only fear, I put childbirth. Like, I was just like, this was like my biggest fear in life. And now I see how backwards that is, but it's almost what is ingrained in us. And, like, it's just like, we are taught to like fear our body, fear this baby coming out of us. And it's really sad because my birth was actually very healing in that sense. Like, I feel like nobody ever says it. I almost feel bad saying it, but I feel like my birth was like pretty much what I wanted. Like, that was the only part of my story that was what I wanted. But it really was amazing and healing. And my mom even said, I told her I was going to have a doula instead of her, because we could only have two people in the room. But my husband obviously was there. And I think, it's a little offensive at first, but like, if I didn't have her and her wisdom and she got me through, I had Pitocin, but otherwise unmedicated, because I was induced, and it was just like so healing. So tell us, like, why would someone want to have a doula with them? Because I can speak from my experience, but you have been at, hundreds of births, maybe thousands of births. So I'm sure you know much better than I do.
Thank you. First of all, do not feel bad saying that your birth is exactly what you wanted. That is, oh my gosh, that makes me feel like a champion. And I wasn't even there. I didn't even support you, didn't even know you. Like, and I'm feeling the champion vibes. Like, make sure that you are relishing in the fact that not only did you push a baby out of your body, and even if your baby didn't come vaginally, like, you had a baby, you grew a baby, you got a baby out of your body somehow, some way. You championed that, and for you it went exactly how you wanted it to be. So I think you should be screaming that from the rooftop, sharing that with other women, saying, actually, if you put the steps into place and you seek out the right support and you seek out the right education, you can have this too. Like, don't let this narrative that society has taught us from where,
right? Movies, right? Like Hollywood. It's so crazy. Even I feel so isolated sometimes when I like talk about it, because I don't know, like, everybody just seems so afraid. I have a girlfriend who's pregnant right now, and she's just like terrified of this. And I'm like, people, like, women have been doing this for thousands of years. This is literally what we are made to do. And it's not this Hollywood movie where, they're trying to create some entertainment, like, this is who we are.
It's really true. And if you think, not to get off on a wild feminist tangent, but if you think about where maternity care actually stems from, it stems from white males who were essentially experimenting on women, women of color in particular. So, not only is that dynamic not great, but like, they were experimenting, and then those things just kind of have stuck around. We are way past experimenting. Why are we doing the same things in 2019? Right? That is one of my biggest questions. And I think it's why the birth lounge is so successful. And I think that's why the TBH approach has caught on like wildfire, because you demand better. Like, you deserve it, right? You just demand better if you take away anything. Also, you talked about it being offensive not having your mom there. That is a tough road to walk. It really is, having to share with someone that thought they were going to be in your birth, that you don't actually necessarily have room for them. So I think there are 2 points that people listening can take away, because it's a big conversation. Number one, you're only letting down their expectation. Okay, it's these feelings are temporary. You're about to give them a baby. I promise you, the fact that you didn't let them in your room is going to be very small. Not that they'll ever forget that, especially that initial feeling. But I think after the fact, they're really going to understand. So in number one, you're not actually hurting their feelings per se. You're only letting down their expectation, what they had expected for your experience, right? Let that sentence sink in for just a minute. And then second is that it's not that you did not want them there or they weren't going to be the perfect support. It's that you didn't have room, right? Unfortunately, there just wasn't room. So I think those are 2 good talking points when you have to present this to moms and moms-in-laws, because those are tough conversations. Okay, finally getting back to why you would have
those are great points, because I remember being like, oh, how am I going to say this? Like, and I think sometimes too, I think it was even my expectation. Like, I thought she was going to want to be in the room, and I'm her baby, and like, all of that. And sometimes it is like get out of your head and just think about like what is going to be best for this situation, because you have to do that when you have a kid anyway, right? Like that's like what you got to learn to do.
It's so true. And if you can't get out of your own head, challenge yourself to ask why that is your expectation. Where did that come from, that the assumption that X person would be in your room, right? Or that Y would definitely happen at your birth, or where did that expectation of Z come from, right? I always challenge people to think about that. All right. Circling back to why you need a doula. A doula can be, so first of all, your doula should act as an entire resource for you, like all separate on its own. Also, I guess I should clarify that I can only really speak to my practice, partly because we are so very different. And I didn't do too much exploring into what is industry standard because that's not
You
how I
had a vision. I like
yeah.
I'm sure you like opened this and you're like, this is how I want to do things.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't really have a need to look into the industry because I already had my end goal. So in TBH, we're a resource all like on its own. If you have a question, your doulas, you can contact them at any time for anything, any question, anywhere. Just pick up your phone, text or call, send us an email. You can get a hold of us in lots of ways. As far as general doulas, there's lots of really great stats. So we lengthen or we shorten the length of your labor. Just having someone there to say, you're doing great, and to also pose ideas and say, hey, it looks like you haven't moved in 30 minutes. We should try a different position. Or, hey, it looks like that hip squeeze is not working. Would you rather get standing up in the shower? Does that sound better? And let me tell you, that moment that you see a laboring person's eyes light up like, oh, she has the answer. You're like, yes, come on, let me help you get some relief. It's those kind of moments I just live for. So shorter labors, also just overall more positive birth experience. I think partly because you feel more in control. You have all the knowledge, you have all the power. Again, that is going to come with choosing a doula that you trust, that has all that knowledge, and that you've looked into kind of the knowledge that they bring. I also, I'm hesitant to, or I want to tell you to be hesitant to base someone's ability to support you on the number of births that they have had. So right out from the start, I was an amazing doula, but not because I had all of this experience, but because I had that very unique background of delivering all that sensitive information. I had that research background from getting a master's. I had that infant and child development from years of being in the classroom, doing early intervention, all the things, being in homes, right? I had all of that. And so really all I was learning was birth stuff. And for me, it was like an obsession. And like
Right.
my partner Nicholas would have to come and get me from the couch like at 3 a.m. and be like, hey, you gotta go to bed. Put the book up. Like go to sleep. You need to rest. And I was like, no, I want to learn all the things about birth. And so yeah, I think honestly that was just kind of the last puzzle piece. But having a doula can also, it reduces the chances that you either use pain relief and or an epidural. It also decreases your risk of having a cesarean section. Again, I think both of those are just simply knowing your options and also having someone there to pose ideas, someone who has navigated birth more than you, right? And even if you have had 5, 6, 7, 8 children, chances are an experienced doula is going to have gone to more than 6, 7, 8, 9 births, right?
Right.
So
Right.
no matter what, and you might be the most experienced birthing person that you know, and a doula is still gonna benefit you. I often hear too people say, oh, I have a cesarean or I have a scheduled cesarean, I don't need a doula. I disagree. Now, I don't think you need a whole doula package. They don't have a place really at your birth. You're going to have a scheduled, you're going to go. So this is something that I actually do for women who have scheduled C-sections. It's mostly virtual because we don't really have a huge reason to meet in person. Otherwise, we could do like coffee or lunch. But we talk about what can they expect? How can they prepare now? Can they expect after the cesarean? The cesarean, like what's the mental and the emotional pieces that come with that? What can they expect from the mental emotional piece versus what do they do if that's not what they're experiencing? Who do they contact, right?
Hmm.
It's
I think
all
that's really awesome, and it's bringing up the good point that like yes, birth is like the physical act, of maybe going through labor. But what if you do have like a scheduled C-section, or like I was induced, so I never even, which I guess I should clarify, like that part wasn't my dream part of labor, but it was kind of like, okay, there's more to this. Like there was the emotional piece to it. It was okay, especially I know some of my friends who have C-sections or who have scheduling, like they feel like they don't trust their body. They have like, some that they have to navigate through that. So there's like a lot of reasons there. And I guess one of the things that I've heard most when I said like I was going to get a doula was, and actually one of my OBs, I spoke to her about it. I went to like one before I hired and I said, I think I'm going to get a doula. And she's like, I had one. I loved my doula. She's like, I'm an OB. I literally deliver babies and I had a doula. And that was like, all right, I'm getting one. And I don't know, I just felt like I trusted her a lot more in that moment because she saw where this fits in. I think that's one of the pieces that I'm hearing is like people don't understand, like, oh, I already have my OB, or like the nurses are going to be there. Like they don't understand that different relationship that happens. And I know how I can explain. I was like, I had a relationship with my doula. She knew a lot of my fears going into it. Like I just met those nurses that day, but maybe you can speak to that a little bit too.
absolutely. So something that sets TBH apart in our whole entire birth experience is that we actually will not take a client on if they have less than 8 weeks left in their pregnancy, simply because at that point, it is so unfortunate. And I am still struggling with the idea of like, we're not helping everyone that has come our way, but I cannot impact your birth the way that I know my team is capable of if I don't have that much time. I have
Mm-hmm.
to have enough time with you, or it is going to traumatize kind of everyone involved. And so I think it's a little bit self-preservation. I think it's a little mama bear where like, I don't want that to happen to my team. And then I think it's also a little bit like, actually, if I can't help you 1,010%, then I would rather help you 0%, because if I helped you out only 42%, I would die. Like that would crush me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to help you 100% or nothing at all. And so the balance that I have found right now as TBH is in this really big growth period is that you do have to have at least 8 weeks, but most of our clients get us between 4 and 6 months pregnant. And so not only do we get to build a very deep relationship with our clients, so we know them intimately, we also have really great standing relationships with the doctors here in Boston. And so there's never really a moment where doctors are kind of snubbing their nose at Tranquility by Hehe. That is not to be said about the whole birth community.
Right.
Absolutely, you're going to have doulas that have wonderful relationships. Then you're going to have doulas that really push the boundaries, and the doctors don't appreciate that. And what I will say to that is that, oh gosh, this is not a double-edged sword. It's like a quadruple edged sword. There's just like, there's so many layers to this. But the first thing is, it's important to remember that everyone brings their own kind of baggage to your birth, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
doulas are going to have their own experiences and their own traumas that they have seen. And then the doctors are also going to have their own stuff and their own traumas. However, they also have an added layer of they work for this hospital. So at the end of the day, their hands actually are tied by a couple things: insurance, the laws, hospital policies, like things that doulas
Right.
have to abide by, quote unquote, abide by, right? Like we should all abide by high standards. Again, can't be said for the whole birth community, but these are not things that doulas necessarily have to answer to, because we don't submit to insurance. We're not medical providers. We don't have a governing body that sets laws for us. There are things like that. I think it's also really important to think about, if your doctor isn't okay with someone else supporting you, is that really the person you want to support you in a one-time done deal, such a transitional, pivotal place that you never get to do over again? It's really important. And you may
Right.
have been with this provider for years and years, since your first period, since your very first pap smear. You need to think about, are they the right person to deliver your baby? And guess what? They can remain your gynecologist, and you have your baby with someone else.
That's
Okay?
a good point. Yep.
Just have your baby with a different person. And when your baby comes and you're healed up, go back to your old gynecologist. There's
Right.
nothing that says you can't have more than one OBGYN fooling with you downstairs. Like, I actually think it's kind of healthy. If you are having a little bit, even the smallest apprehension about your current doctor, you should 1000% look into that, and the facility that you're having your baby at. Now, unfortunately, depending on where you live and socioeconomic status and privilege, that's not always going to be an option. Sometimes your insurance covers nobody else in your area. Sometimes your next hospital is 2.5 hours away.
Right.
That's really unfortunate. What do I say to that? Let me get TBH up and running, guys, and I will start to tackle our healthcare system.
Right. I mean, it is there are, like, luckily, I guess I hadn't thought of it really from that perspective, because I do feel very fortunate that I live in Pittsburgh, where we have like all these hospitals, and like we're like so medical based. But I wanted to give birth at the midwife center, and I was high risk, so they wouldn't take me. So like, there's always just things that you have to navigate. I guess it is like another testament to, you just have to make a plan, but it's probably not going to go the way that you think, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So I'm the queen of saying that you have you have so many choices, right? You have choices in almost everything. And I also think that you can firmly control your birth. I think you can control how it goes. I get a lot of flack from that, because people are like, you can't control birth. Correct. However, you can control so many pieces. You can control who's in the room. You can control your mindset. You can control what you see. You can control what you hear, what you smell, what you eat, who your nurse is, who your doctor is, when you go to the hospital, the pain relief that you get,
Right.
what you're wearing, like all down to like, who cuts the cord? At what point do you cut the cord? Like, you have so many choices now. You can't control everything, like, but that is life. So to say, yeah, but what about those things that pop up? Okay, that's not called birth. That's called being alive.
Right. Okay, which is
Like,
like one of the things I've been diving into lately. I'm like, this
yeah,
is just what happens.
you don't get to blame that on birth. No way. Absolutely not. That is called being human. And so it's going to happen in life. It's going to happen in parenthood. It's going to happen in marriage. It's going to happen in birth, but you don't get to blame that on birth, right? So we can control so much of labor. When the things happen that we are, don't expect, then we'll navigate that. We can
I think
reevaluate.
that's a really empowering way to think about it. Like, I think, like, let's give back the power to the woman. Let's give the power back to the mom. Let's not act like this is some huge medical procedure that's like has to be done the certain way. It's like, let's just, like, I guess what I've been thinking of, like, there are circumstances pop up, and you just, it doesn't have to send you down this big rabbit hole into the negative spiral. It's just like, okay, pivot. What's my next choice? Like, where do I go next? What do I do from here?
Exactly. I love that you said, give the power back to the women. It's true. It really is true. We're giving power back to birthing people all over the world, and
Mm-hmm.
we're changing lives.
Yeah, totally. So tell me, because I'm just indulging a little bit, what is your favorite part of the job?
Oh man, it's really tough. And this is a conversation that we've been having a lot lately, because we're growing, right, exponentially, and we grow every single day, and it's a little scary, but it's hella
Because
fun.
it's needed. It's so needed.
It is. Thank you very much. It's very exciting. But we are having conversations about prioritizing, right? And so what do you give up first? We give up the things that don't fulfill you. And so when I look around, I'm like, ugh, but all of this stuff fulfills me. Like, how do I give this up?
Right.
What
Mm-hmm.
is my favorite part? For me, I think seeing parents click on their light bulb of confidence. So you usually get two, or we usually get two. We usually get one prenatally, and they're like, I can do this. Like, I'm excited. So generally our clients use the word excited, which is really wild to hear someone say that they are excited for birth.
Yeah.
Also have to think that our clients 9 times out of 10 are going to have very they're going to have a lot of anxiety. They're going to have a lot of fears. They're going to have a lot of concerns. Like, those are the type of moms that seek us out. Those are the type of parents that really
Right. Mm-hmm.
come to TBH.
Me.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of our very unique approach. And so to hear them, say we're excited for birth it brings me to tears every time. And I've heard it for 3 years now, which is really crazy. And then that second light bulb is usually right after your baby is born. We can just see, like, with just a few hours of support from us, we can see that light bulb kind of flicker on. And then over the next few days, we deliver pretty intensive care. Of course, if the parents want it, they generally do want us to be in their homes for the first few days. And so we can just see that light bulb get bigger and bigger and bigger. And they just radiate, right? And so it makes me happy. And so I think the confidence in the parents is my favorite part. Of course, attending births, I'll die attending births. Like, I'll never give that up.
That's awesome.
Yeah, educating parents is my fave. Just helping them understand where their control is, whether that's in pregnancy, in the birth, or in parenthood, because we do infant development, of course, as well, and helping us navigate, like, well, what does it look like now that your partner has to go to work and can't do that 9 a.m.
Right.
feed, but also can't do that 7 a.m. feed either because they leave the house at 6:45. What does that look like for you guys now? And what does that look like that, ooh, you're actually bringing home a baby to 2 toddlers this time. So that looks a lot different than a baby to 1 toddler, right? How do you navigate that? And how do you navigate, I don't know, the things that come up between you and your partner that are just like little tiffs, arguments that come up because you're navigating a new life with a new human on minimal sleep and
that's the worst
probably
part.
minimal food because you've not slept, so you don't remember to eat. Things like that, right? The laundry's piling up, the dishes are piling up, and you guys are just surviving. How do you get that done? That's what we do. All
I love that, because I think that postpartum period, especially new, like like you're saying, okay, the first time it was like, I just was not expecting it to be as hard as it was. And then now I'm like, oh my gosh, if I got pregnant again, I'd have, like Charlotte at home. Now what do I do? So each time it's like a new added layer. It's always going to be like a new experience. And of course I feel a little more qualified for a lot of it, but it looks different every single time. So I think it's necessary to have support every time, like I think the lack of support or asking for support is like almost what just needs to be brought to the forefront as well. So I feel like you actually shared like so much. And one of the questions I was going to ask you is that, like, I know you're way more knowledgeable about babies and birth, and like, what were like 2 or 3 things that you think every new mom should know? But I feel like you've like given so many. I don't know if there are any that you like have others where you're like, oh yeah, this is a really important one.
Yeah, so a couple, I guess, come to mind. First of all, you know your child better than anyone else, right? Like, in utero, on the outside, if something doesn't feel aligned with you, then it's probably wrong. It's an outside person that may or may not have ever met your child before. Definitely take their advice with a grain of salt. You don't want to like toss it out the window. Keep it in the back of your mind, and just remember that, that doctor one time that had met your child that once before you decided to go to a different doctor did say this, and you'll keep it in the back of your mind. But now that you've, looked at the research, or you've asked 2 other pediatricians, or you asked your mom group, you're feeling like maybe this is a better route, go with that route, explore it. You do know your child best. If someone is like, gosh, your baby's not moving that much, and you're like, they never really move that much, go with that. You know your baby. That's someone else's opinion that your baby is not moving. Also, what are they basing that opinion on, right? Something they read on Google, or like their own experience, and they drank a Coke every single day during their pregnancy. Like, be mindful of that. You know your child better than anyone else. Also, when it comes to birth, just because someone else says that you can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. Yeah, someone else doesn't get to govern your birth experience. So if you have a doctor telling you that a VBAC is not possible, you should look into changing doctors. And you know what? Maybe it is worth a 2.5 hour drive. It's going to come down to how important a VBAC is. There are going to be VBAC midwives too. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in certain states, you'll have to look at your particular state's laws. Midwives are outlawed in some laws still, and surprisingly, we're in 2018. But just because someone else says something about your labor or your delivery or your baby does not make it true.
That's again empowering, right? Like you don't have to, except like I kind of had that thought like, oh, I have to be induced, and so I really wanted an unmedicated birth. I'm like, how am I going to be able to do this without Pitocin? Everybody, oh, Pitocin's the devil. Like, you're never going to be able to make it, blah, blah, blah. And luckily I'm stubborn. And I was just like, okay, you said I can't. So now I definitely will, So yeah, it's just like, don't let all of that chatter like infiltrate. And it's going to try to do that the remaining time you're a mom. And it's really easy, like when you're in that vulnerable place, to let those voices get louder and louder. And like you're saying, go back to your intuition, listen to your gut, remember that you were given this baby. It's like, you're the mom. And there's magic in that. There really is.
There really is. I mean, it's so true. If you just stop and connect with yourself and your inner goddess is what I call it, it will tell you probably what the truth is. I mean, I have visceral reactions sometimes. Sometimes I feel so nauseous when things are so out of line with me. I'm like, this is gonna make me throw up. And I'm listening to like a podcast of birth trauma, right? Like I'm not even watching anything horrible. It's just like hearing terrible stories. And I'm like, this is gonna make me nauseous. Tap into that. It's hard if you don't know how. It's really hard. So meditation is a great way to tap into that. Just sitting and thinking, how would I feel if X happened? And then go down that rabbit hole. If you get to the end of that rabbit hole and you're like, oh my God, I couldn't live with myself, then you would need to explore a different rabbit hole. Say, what would happen? How would I feel if, and explore your different options. I guess that's another thing is you have choices in almost everything. You're in so much control. You have to put in the work to do it though. And that's where a lot of people just don't do.
I think you were supposed to come on and tell me that. Like that, I've been grappling with something lately, and it's kind of like I've been feeling that. I'm like, yeah, I just need to sit with my thoughts and kind of go down the different holes and see where feels best, what feels right. Yeah, like it's scary, and sometimes I think it's also worth saying that like it's not always the ideal, right? Like it's still like you're going to go down these rabbit holes, or you're going to have to make some choices for you and your baby that maybe you just like didn't want to have to make. And I think that's where my story really comes from. Like that, I was just like, I kept having to make choices that I didn't want to have to make. And I felt smaller each time instead of feeling like I'm just doing the best I can. Right.
Yeah, I think so. Meditation again is a really great thing for really connecting to that kind of inner goddess and realizing where you stand on certain things. And once you've made your decision, once you feel like you know all the information and you can make a decision based in whatever's important to you, you will find that confidence. Another thing that we haven't really talked about is mantras. So when someone comes at you or all that noise is around you, I love a good mantra.
Me too.
If you're feeling really, sassy that day, ask yourself, like, who is this person? Do they get to make decisions for my life? Okay, no, they don't. You don't get to make decisions for my life. Like, talk to yourself like that. Who is this person? If you're feeling jaded and you're feeling like your feelings are hurt, remind yourself, I don't get to control anyone else but me. I can't. You don't even get to control your kid. You grew that thing.
Right. So true. Yes.
You get to control your child. You cannot control anyone but yourself. Another mantra I love is, I don't get to control what other people think about me. Also, it's none of my business. It is none of my business what other people think about me.
So that's such a good one. That's still the one that I like am working on, but it's allowed every time I get better at it. Like I take a step forward, right? Yes.
It really is. What other people think about you is none of your business because they don't have the whole truth. Nobody nobody knows your entire world,
True.
or they would obviously love you, because people don't just set out to not like people. So when someone doesn't like me, I'm always like, they clearly don't know me.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out they usually don't know me.
Right,
Right? Like,
right.
someone doesn't like you, because I think people in general are lovable people.
Mm-hmm.
They just,
Yeah.
humans are lovable creatures. And so when someone doesn't like you, most likely it's because they only have half the story, or maybe not even, maybe they have like a quarter of your story.
Right. True. And speaking of mantras, and since we're talking about birth, I'll give the one that I did use during birth. It was embrace the suck. It was like going towards transition, and I was just like ready to tap out. And my husband's like, he said, embrace the suck. And so every contraction, that's what I did. It was just, yep, they work. I mean, I actually really love mantras. I use them quite frequently, and just journaling, like rewriting the mantra over and over again. But this has been really great. I think you've shared so much valuable information. I know that everybody's like going to be super pumped up now, especially if they are pregnant and they're thinking about, you know what, maybe this is like something that I need. So tell us where they connect with you, you know, a little bit more maybe about like what exactly you offer in terms of maybe being local to Boston. I know a couple people up there, and obviously this is virtual, and then, you know, the virtual services.
For sure. So the easiest way to work with me is to go to www.thebirthlounge.com and to sign up for our membership. So it's actually the most accessible. It is the most affordable. You don't get one-on-one, but I show up every single week live for you guys. It is a online membership and community of expecting and postpartum moms. So anywhere on your pregnancy journey throughout your first year of postpartum, and we step you through every single thing. We leave no stone unturned. Remember, if I'm not going to serve you 1,000%, I'm going to serve you 0. It serves you 1,010%. If you're interested in one-on-one personal services, actual in-person support, Tranquility by Hehe, that's HEHE.com, is going to be the best place to do that. And all of our packages are there. Birth support, just postpartum support, virtual support. We do virtual postpartum as well if you need someone to debrief about your birth and make a plan of how to cope with, you know, maybe even birth trauma, or how to go forward with life with a new baby. All of that. If you can think of it, it's likely that someone on our team does that.
Awesome. I love that so much. I mean, like I said, this is such a needed service. And I mean, I hope I have another baby and I can use it all. That would be kind of nice.
I will be there.
Right. So again, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and chat. I know this is going to be really super helpful. I'm already making my list of all the moms that I got to be like, hey, make sure you go watch this. So I appreciate it so much. And yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to share this with your people.
Yay.